Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Warrant and Finance Committee meeting for the 5th of December, 2016. I'm Dr. W.O. Williams, chairperson, and we have a cold and snowy night tonight, and we have a quorum, but we do not have our full complement of members. Tonight we were going to go through a number of items real quickly. It's going to be a quick meeting. I wanted to remind everybody they had last time their Freedom of Information questionnaire and answer pages off the internet, and they were to read those. It took me at least two readings to get it all into my head, and then to sign the certificate that you were aware of what Maine's law is as it pertains to freedom of information, and that would be placed in everyone's folder after it was completed. And I hope everyone has had a chance. Ms. Misha, you're the newest one. I don't know whether you've had a chance to do that yet. But so if you'll go ahead and get that finished at your convenience and turn the paper into to Jennifer Rue, please, if you would, ma'am. Okay. The next item was about donations. We had given everyone some handouts to look at. Those handouts were given out simply as a suggestion, simply as a way to try to get some order in this. And I will be the first to say that last year, the Warrant and Finance Committee did not have a chance to vet any of the donation requesters. And I spent about 6 hours myself on the telephone talking to some of them, and were impressed with almost everyone's ability to answer the questions and give me some idea as to the amount of interaction that they have with the citizens of Acton. But to be honest with you, the way it's been done the last couple of years has been that we've asked people to, who want a donation to turn in some sort of an information sheet. It's individualized by organization. There's no universal form that they have to fill out or any similar questions that they have to answer. And some of the sheets, I must admit, are simply PR sheets that give very little information. From a personal point of view, I think that we as citizens and as a part of the town government have a real obligation to make sure that if we're going to deal with public money and the donation of public money to various groups, that we are sure that we have had a chance to make sure that these organizations provide a service to our citizens or some sort of educational or some sort of watch over environment and problems of that sort for our town, actually helping our town in a direct or even an indirect way. At the present time, anyone can go to a selectman and ask to be placed on the donor list. And for the last couple of years, it has been very, very informal, and names have appeared on the list before the Warrant and Finance Committee, whom no one had ever seen before and who had not been on the list in previous years. And somehow or other, monies had been suggested to be given to them without any consultation with the Warrant and Finance or anybody else. And so what I was attempting to do was to give a suggested thing that we could send to the selectmen, and if they want it, fine. If they don't want it, fine. But to impress upon them our desire to assist in making sure that there is a mechanism for people who want to get on the donation list, number one, and that number two, that when we have a donation list, that the Warrant and Finance Committee, if the selectmen want us to be their agent, would in fact take that on and make arrangements to either interview with people at their place, or in the past it has been that we have had an afternoon or 2 afternoons in which they were invited to come and present their organization's criteria for wishing to have donations. But even if we do that, the question is then, shouldn't we have a form that everyone will use for every organization that'll be the same? And so I, again, brought out a form that we can look at and talk about. Now, if the voters of Acton do not wish to have any vetting, they wish to lower the amount of monies that had been presented by the Board of Selectmen at the town meeting, they can lower the amount that's been suggested. They cannot raise it, and they cannot add people at the town meeting. There must be a mechanism for our voters to be able to say, I want such and such an organization, and we don't have one right now, short of just going to a selectman and asking to be put on a list. Eventually, knowing the way the economic times are at this moment, they're going to be, in the future, I'm sure the list is going to get longer. It's gotten longer just in the 3 years I've been here. And now the total bill for the donations are up in the $70,000 per year. And so I think this is an issue that we can help straighten out, and that Warrant and Finance can assist in that a great deal, so that we have a uniform system with uniform questions and uniform vetting process, and a uniform process for organizations and voters to, number one, put organizations on the donation list, and number two, for the recipients of donations to be able to come in and give a reason why their particular product for the town of Acton should be increased or continued on at the amounts of money that they have received last year. So, yes, please.
My question pertains to, if they get on this list, you know, I don't know what large of a window you're actually going to give them, like the whole year or so many months or so many weeks. What are you going to process it, even if, say they want $10 versus $100, does it still get processed, or is it going to be?
If they come and want on the list, and they'll ask for monies, and if we have the right questioning, we can figure out, you know, if they only want $10, you know, we have a fund for that. I think Neighbor Helping Neighbor is one of the funds that we could give. But this is usually, I think most of the donations, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have someone from the selectmen here this evening, most of them run about 250, 500, 1,000, up to 20 some odd thousand. So it's a long range there. And again, some of the things that we see are going to happen in the future, like helicopter evacuations, are going to be increasing as the federal government requires patients with acute heart attacks to get to a major medical center for intervention within a time frame. And right now we are on the edge of the border of Maine, and it takes a long time to get to Maine Medical Center in Portland, and we are probably in the future going to have to look at faster ways of getting certain diagnoses to a medical center.
Now, when each person or individual that comes before us be able to do their own article, or are they going to be clumped? How is that going to work?
I'm sorry?
Are they going to do their own article?
Yes.
In other words, are you going to take 20 articles, or are you going to clump them together?
That's a question, again, which I think the selectmen are going to have to help us with. It's been pointed out that perhaps we might be wise to make each one a separate article, so that people can then look and focus on one thing and why the Warrant and Finance Committee said, yes, this is a good thing to do, and go up or down on the vote on that. And I would agree that would perhaps, even though it might take a little bit of time, it's not going to take that much time to go through 20 or so articles on donations.
I'd be definitely
yeah,
in favor
and so
of that.
that's something which we should be talking with the selectmen about when they adapt their budget. But I think that everyone is in agreement that's something we ought to try.
That way you wouldn't one article, if they were lopped into 20, you wouldn't play one social service against the other. And no one does it as, I shouldn't use those words, but.
I understand what you're
you
saying,
know what
though.
I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
Because sometimes it's good intentions to move money to try to fund something
Right,
else, but.
right. And that's going to be important in the
Where
future.
everything can stand on their own.
That's going to be important in the future, because somewhere along the line, I'm sure the selectmen are going to have to say, okay, with the budget the way it is, if we want to keep the budget neutral with these donors being added to the list, how are we going to cut the pie a little bit differently to make sure that everyone gets a piece of the pie, since the pie is finite in size and the potential for increasing the list of donors is infinite? Okay.
Well, the thing is, we just went through some And my thing is that it went from asking so much, but it got so much at a different meeting, which I understand, but it wasn't like a big meeting. It was only a private issue of like, say, 50 or 60 people, which I know it's hard to get out. It's always been an issue like that. I don't want something like that to happen again. I basically would like to see it on the floor, take care of it.
Straight up on its own.
Yeah, do
on
its own thing.
legs,
In
you
other
can knock
words,
it off
if
even.
they want $1,000 and on the floor says, no, we're only gonna give them 500, well, explain to me why you wanna do that. And explain to
That's their
everybody.
Well, see, that's where I think Warrant and Finance is the organ to do that in, okay? Because, first of all, if we have a standardized form, we will learn very quickly which areas they seem to be weak, ask them specific questions about it. And if, in fact, we consider them to be weak, then we can say, we find there are some difficulties here with this organization because. If you have 25 different groups and we are asking questions from the floor of the town hall meeting, that will become extremely cumbersome. Extremely cumbersome. That's what we're supposed to be here for. This committee is to say to the voters, look, we have vetted this, and in our good judgment, this is our suggestion.
No matter how good we are.
Yes.
There's always gonna be 20 people on the floor that are gonna want.
No
20
question about it.
answers.
And the voters will have the right, at every meeting to reduce the amount that was suggested, okay? Or cannot add anybody else.
Now, Life Flight, wouldn't that be added into the fire department's?
They already
budget
use
at
it.
this
They've used Life Flight here, but,
Yeah, but-
We use it, but they are on the donation list. They have not been up until now on fire and rescue, but I would agree with you in the future, now that we have the fire and rescue under the town, that's something, again, that the selectmen should be looking at as to whether or not the helicopter service for evacuation should not be a part of the medical rescue, and make sure that our heliport is in good shape and that we practice doing all of that sort of thing in the future.
I think years ago,
I
they had
totally agree.
a plan. They have like 3 or 4 landing sites already
Yeah.
marked out in town.
But they need to practice it because everyone needs to practice
Yeah.
those things. And to make sure that there aren't any obstructions now with lines and things of that sort, and that they're good heliports. Now, everyone had a chance to look at this. There may be other questions that you may want to add to it.
Tom has a question.
Tom, have you had a chance?
Just two considerations.
Yeah.
One is, there's kind of what we've been talking about up till now is a recurring organization
Mhm.
versus a one-time or a rare request that would come in the form of a warrant article unto itself. Am I right? The example would be what Lois was speaking of, the veteran cemetery.
If you want
versus-
to add something, we ought to have a mechanism whereby that person goes to a selectman and say, I would like X to be added to the donation list. And then the selectman would say, fine, we will send this to Warrant and Finance to vet it.
Do you foresee this donation list as being for one time? I'll raise 2 examples. One would be similar to the veteran cemetery issue, which personally I think would have been more sensibly handled if we had done that through the venue of an article in and of itself.
I believe so, too.
Well, as I said, I think the idea of having each of them as their own separate article is a good idea.
I don't know if I agree with you there, but anyway, the other kind of a request you might get that comes to mind, and it's rare, is an environmental request that's similar to, and this was in the 90s, when Mousom Lake needed some special funding for state aid and federal aid. And we had to raise quite a bit of money through town meeting.
And that would probably be, if it's a special thing and Mousom is about to go under as far as quality of the water, and they have a town meeting, since that's an important lake within our town limits, that may very well be something that should have gone ahead and specially.
As an overall criterion, might we be thinking of recurring versus one-time expenses that And maybe that would be one way to parse out this list.
Well, I would consider Mawson at that time, and you were there and I wasn't, almost an emergency, because
Yeah,
the
that would be
quality
a
of the
warrant
water
article.
was such that they were worried that it would become irretrievable as far as being able to have a viable lake back in the early 90s.
All I'm saying, Will, is that it might be a means by which you could quickly separate items A through M and then N through Z. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, most of these, however, are the ones that keep coming up every single year.
My problem with recurring articles is that, I don't know if you guys, a few years ago, even with the recurring articles, that people had to come before you and talk.
Mhm.
Just because it's recurring, I don't want them to get in the habit, it's recurring, but why should we go? This is just a recurring article, it's the same thing. I want
Well,
them
but
to still
sometimes-
explain.
I agree with you totally.
I know, I
It should be
want-
renewed every year because their programs might have changed, their emphasis may have changed. There may be another group now that's doing the same thing that we need to know about. Those are the kind of, I totally agree with you.
I don't I know what he's trying to say.
But he's talking about an emergency like Mossam, and in those instances there, I would assume that would
Well, no,
require, huh?
being necessarily an emergency. I mean, the veteran cemetery would be also an example of where it might have been more, less contentiously handled by having it a warrant article unto itself.
Well, that's possible, but again, I will say, as far as that is concerned, we're dealing with public tax money. We need to make sure that the
Understood.
organizations that receive that money do something for the town of Acton.
And as
And
far as-
that's an argument we'll have on town floor, I'm sure.
Exactly.
And if the voters decide that they want to do it differently, that's fine, but as a voter and as a taxpayer, I would be very unhappy to see my tax money going for something that was not going to benefit our town citizens.
Well, I think it is. I think it is benefiting the
Oh.
families of people who live in this town, and that matter.
That's
and
possible. We should,
Respectfully, if I could, just for a minute, I know you're a Bronze Star, and absolutely, I can't even tell you how much I respect that. I am the son of a Iwo Jima Purple Heart, was my father, and I have 10 brothers and 3 sisters. When we meet, whenever we go back home, whenever we meet at my father's grave. You understand?
Mm.
There's value in that.
oh, yes,
There's great
Yes,
value,
yes.
and there is 28 people right now buried
yes,
from
I
Acton.
understand.
And there's probably, from the Middle East, there's probably going to be another 50.
I think that
The
that's getting,
value, I don't know how you get your return on your investment for family members, but it's great. My father would probably have the same opinion you would,
okay.
but
I think
for
that,
the families,
Mr. Driscoll, this is getting off what we're talking about
I don't
right
think
now.
it is, though.
Well,
I think
it is
you-
because
you-
we're looking at a system
You
now.
had mentioned, I
We're looking
understand
at a
that,
system now.
but you had mentioned return for Acton people,
Yes.
and I don't know how you weigh that. I was just following up on the point that you
Yeah,
made.
how do you weigh a death as a return? That's the problem.
Well, if an organization is helping the family bury, maintaining the graves, as you are very, very civically, practically doing on your own, okay, that is a benefit for the town. Okay, but if for a national cemetery that's dedicated for 2 states, if you want to talk about that,
Now that you said that, that's a double-edged sword, because they benefit us when they take over our burial for our veterans.
They
benefit us because I know, that way, I know where they're at, they're in a safe spot.
this is an
Going
issue.
down the road,
This is an
We'll
issue which the
discuss this
town,
on
which the
town
town can do it, okay? This is not what we're sitting here tonight to do.
No.
We're sitting here tonight to see if we can get some mechanisms in place so that every year, we're not gonna go through some capricious, non-objective choosing of organizations who want donations from the town, and we have no way of doing it right now, nor does the average voter who wants to have a particular organization in there and the list have a way of getting into the system easily so that it can be vetted and quickly presented.
Oh, I agree, because I've seen the list and several of them, and some of them I don't even know.
So let me
why
ask if
we're
I understand this right.
Yeah.
This is going to be accepted for us as the Warrant and Finance,
If-
as protocol to follow
If
us.
selectmen say we want Warrant and Finance to be the agent to vet all of these. And they need to all be vetted. I totally agree with Ms. Michaud. And we should be doing it on an annual
I do
basis.
too,
Okay? We ought to have the same format for every group that comes up. And so this would be the format that I had suggested. And you could add questions or subtract questions from this, and I hope that you've had a chance to look at it, to do that, and then we will type it up and print it up very nicely.
Would you consider it for this year or next year?
This year. That's why we're having this meeting today, because we want to send them out, if you all agree, and send them out and saying we're going to have as the initial this year, because it's going to be coming up the budget soon, have some days in which they would come in to us and we would go over their having completed this form with
Now, is
them.
this gonna come back to Warrant and Finance or come back to Jennifer's office?
This will come back to Warrant and Finance.
So just so I understand the process,
Yes.
okay?
Mhm.
If I can finish.
Surely.
The selectmen will still, it's their warrant.
Yeah.
So, say the same 20 from last year or whatever the number was, they'll move them forward on their warrant, okay?
Mhm.
What this is saying, that when they're moved forward, they're all gonna be presented with this, right? These questions and answers. Can we have something also requesting that they come before us?
Yes, they will have to come before us. How do we complete this? How do we complete?
I understand, but I don't see it in here anywhere.
Oh.
That's one of the most important. I think,
Absolutely.
So they have the opportunity, so in the future, as boards change, that these folks will have an opportunity to come in here and speak.
Or we will say to them, we'd like some interview time, and one or two members of the Warrant and Finance would go to their office.
But we're not gonna be here forever. I mean, as the
No,
boards
but
change.
if we
documented.
have it documented as to what
That's
our
what
options
that's what
are,
I'm asking.
those would be the two options that we should have.
The other thing, are we going to accept a letter? In other words, a letter or?
They can send us a letter, but they gotta fill this out.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if they send a letter of recommendation, in other words, they would like one of these, they send it back, say they can't get in to see us, but we have a letter on file that states why they want it in this too. Is that something that we're gonna hold for them or against them, because they couldn't be in front of the board to see
Well, I think
why?
if it's a really big donation that they want, if it's a $10 one, I'm not gonna worry. If it's a $500 or $1,000 one, then believe you me, I personally would be happy to get in the car and go and talk with them over this particular piece of paper.
Can we add that language to this
Yes,
document?
it could be
that
added
they
that
would-
they would have to
Come bef-
complete it and discuss
before
it
us.
before us face to face, or that we would go to them face to face.
I would suggest strongly that it not be the responsibility of this committee nor the Board of Selectmen to seek out charitable organizations to donate to, in terms of
To
vetting.
seek them
In terms
out.
of vetting them. The vetting ought to be done, they ought to take the initiative, and we can give them two opportunities, either a Saturday meeting, the way it's been done in the
Right,
past,
that's what I'm talking about.
and/or an evening,
Hmm.
during the week sometime, to allow any and all organizations to come in and talk.
It's fun, but what we're trying to do is to be transparent, and what we're trying to do is to be as flexible as possible for everybody, for the voter
Right.
as well as the recipient. And as I said, if someone says, look, we only have 3 people in this office and we're doing X number of such and such a day, and I really can't do it, is there some other way to do it? I'll get in the car and go see them.
I understand, because it's like a broken leg or a broken arm, you can't just go because you
But
wanna go.
it was always nice when they came before the
It's
committee and we
convenient
were
for
all
us.
together.
It's convenient for us all together. I totally agree.
We could, everyone.
But there's going to be some organizations that can't do it, or perhaps some organizations that are out of Kennebunk or someplace else that want some of our.
They were pretty good though about when we used to do it. They were all here.
Yeah.
They
Well,
had
we
their
can
time
certainly
slots
use that
if
as
they
an
wanted it.
option to do.
And then as conversation went on, more questions came up. It was just really informative. I
Well,
think that's-
and just like we did with the commission, everybody in the group has a chance to go around the table and ask questions, but it's all going to be based on their having completed this that we can see. And if we see something that looks a little bit questionable, we can focus down on that particular question to get information from them.
So can we add that language that they
Yes.
must come?
Yes,
Cool.
well, this particular thing which I handed out is just the questionnaire part. As far as the procedure, that was in your other handout from before.
So we voting on
This
this
select-
tonight?
Just looking at this one here, yes.
Can we,
So this is the format of the form. Now, how that's being used is the second question, which we can again pass amongst ourselves. And I certainly agree with Mr. Cashin and with you, Mr. Driscoll, that we ought to have a mechanism in place that they can come before us at a time we can concentrate on people who want to have donations on a Saturday or on an evening. But I don't think that should be the only thing, and we should have the option of saying, okay, with your particular circumstances, organization Y, we understand that you don't have the personnel to come out here and sit on a Saturday afternoon because you're out giving influenza shots, okay? And so we'll go ahead and make an appointment that's convenient for you, and two or more of our group can come out and visit with them.
I would suggest there'd be more than one,
I
at
agree
least
too.
2 or 3.
Yes,
because
at least two,
it's not-
at least two.
Yeah, it's not,
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
Will,
that's what it's here for.
On your first page.
Yep.
Of the packet, of the 2 pages that were included in our packet that we received at our last meeting. And this is entitled Recommended Ordinance/Policy Definitions for Town Donations.
Yep. Hold on.
Can we just go over and maybe reach consensus on those first 4 points? The 5th point relates to the format of questions, so we'll be dealing with that as an item.
Ms. Michaud probably hasn't had a chance to look at that yet.
I'm sharing that with Lois.
that's the first, I was kind of looking to see if it was in something
what is that
dedicated.
again, Tom? Could you just tell me?
It was in that big packet that we received.
Yeah, what is this address?
Recommended ordinance policy here. This one.
Yeah, just share Will's a little. May I?
Yeah, please, go ahead.
The first one is kind of a boilerplate. The Board of Selectmen will include in every annual town budget a non-capricious list of charitable organizations and non-government organizations worthy of public donations, along with suggested donation amounts for adoption by the town meeting. And this is understood that this would be after our vetting process, Will, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we would have.
If we're the chosen agent for the selectmen, and I assume we would be, since we have traditionally been.
Agent, am I right?
Sir?
We're proposing to do that,
Yes.
to undertake that. So this, I guess the only loose end here is, are the selectmen free to add or subtract something?
If you look at
Item
number 3,
from this.
if you look at number 3, Tom, each organization requesting funds must be vetted by the Board of Selectmen or their designated representatives. This function can be
This
assigned.
would be an issue still standing, though. The list is received by the Board of Selectmen. Do they have leeway, and I assume they do, being the Board of Selectmen, to add or subtract something?
They can do whatever they
From
want.
the warrant.
There's
Their
always
warrant.
been a-
Yeah, that's their prerogative.
Okay. So that's,
We have no rights to add anything to a warrant.
Right.
Or an article of a warrant.
so that's a good thing to have understood right at the outset, I guess. Number 2, each organization must provide a personal, environmental, legal, or educational service to the citizens of Acton and categorized into needs, qualification, subcategories as defined by the Board of Selectmen.
Well, again, that was the other suggestion,
That
which
makes-
doesn't have to be. If the
It
Board of
might be
Selectmen
good.
doesn't want it, that's fine, but we had health category, social welfare safety net category, public safety, environment, water quality category, and town recreation category. I don't know what other categories there would be that want donations from us, and I just gave an example there. But you,
Out of curiosity, how did you derive your percentages there, Will?
those are all just
I know. but
samples.
How?
No, it's up
I
to
see
the
that
Board of
as a-
Selectmen to use that or not use it. The important thing was that we ought to have categories so that we can say, this is the health category, this is a public safety category.
But we're not adopting that
We're
tonight.
not adopting
this
it.
is what we're
I know.
adopting. So
I'm
that's-
just saying, what is, I'm just being a devil's advocate.
That's okay, it's fine.
What is the goal achieved by categorization, prior categorization?
Well, again, to me, the selectmen should be looking at the fact, okay, we have maybe 5 general categories of donations.
Yeah.
And if things are getting worse economically, and we got hundreds of families who are without any income, et cetera, then maybe we're going to have to give a larger percentage for social service donations than we would have given, say, if everything economically is doing fine. And so for 1 year's budget, maybe social services will occupy 40% of our donation. They need to ask themselves in the beginning, how much money are we going to spend for donations? I mean, because really the sky is the limit right now. If anyone comes and wants to be on the list, we are obliged to go ahead and to vet them if the Board of Selectmen has that name. And it may just be that most of the organizations that want money are going to be social service ones. We certainly don't have anything for battered spouses in Acton, and that is an increasing problem. We certainly,
In the past, it was one of the,
well, there's one in the county, but not for Acton.
I think at one point they came forward.
Karen Unlimited,
I'm sorry?
Karen Unlimited,
That's one of them, right?
right, and then they have the kids free to grow for children.
But they're not based in Acton, are they? That's for the county.
No, it's in Sanford.
In Sanford, right.
But they service.
They service us. That's what
Just
we're talking
question
about.
the purpose of categorization here. I don't know what, because unless you're going to enforce it,
We're not enforcing
not an
anything.
instrument
We're
anyway.
going to be able to determine how many of our donations are going to what type of service.
just
That's
as an
Just
accountant.
just as a epidemiological,
I'm with you.
okay?
Well, I didn't know if you.
Now that you
used
said that, I'm with you.
I didn't
These
know
are
if you
all
used
just
these figures-
examples. These are
Well, no,
all-
I didn't know if you used these figures off of what we've done in the past.
No, ma'am, I can't find it.
This is a tool in our
This is a
toolbox.
tool for the selectmen to be able
That's
to,
all
in
it
the
is.
future.
This is what we're
Okay.
talking about tonight.
Yep.
That's just
Yeah.
all
So,
good stuff.
Number 4, did I do number 3? No, I didn't do number 3. Each organization requesting funds must be vetted by the Board of Selectmen or their designated representatives, which in this case is going to be, we're requesting of the board that it be the Finance.
It'll
and
be
Warrant
us, yes.
Finance. This function can be assigned to the Finance and Warrant Committee at the desire of the Board of Selectmen. Number 4, each organization requesting funds must communicate in writing or by direct visitation conferences with the delegated group
And I
assigned by
think
the
there,
Board of
with this discussion, we should say instead of or, and, by direct visitation conferences with the delegated groups.
Where is that?
I would even-
Will?
Number 4,
Number 4.
I would
Instead
even
of
like to
or.
strike in writing.
here, this one
Oh,
here.
and that there.
Yeah. Each organization requesting funds must communicate in writing and by direct visitation conferences with the delegated group. Okay? And number 5, Tom?
I would just suggest that on number 4 there, that we somehow or other stipulate that a direct visitation is a necessary component of the request.
Direct,
They can write us, but they're also, it's
Face-to-face.
incumbent upon them to
yes,
appear in person.
face-to-face with the group as a whole, or at least a delegation of 2+.
Or a quorum, because they usually come before the meeting. And
Right, if it's for the group here, it's a quorum, but if we're having to go out, we'll use the standardized format, but I agree with you, Ms. Michaud, that we ought to have at least 2 people, not one by themselves,
No, because I learned. from my
That's
last
if
meeting.
they can't make it.
if they can't make it. And they have a bona fide reason for
Right.
doing so, okay? And so, direct face-to-face before a quorum, or
Sounds good.
visitation with 2 or more members if necessary. Okay. And then number 5 is this
Criteria.
format. Okay. Now, I would hope that you've had a chance to at least read these, and I don't know whether our selectman liaison has had a chance to look at them also, and perhaps she might have any comments about the questions, because what I'd like to do, once we agree with this, is to have it typed up in a really nice format that's easy to read and give space for putting in items that we're asking them to write in. Ms. Miller, do you have any?
I did not get my own copy to study.
You haven't-
You didn't get one? I'm sorry.
I looked at the office
I apologize, you should have gotten one. That's just the format for the questionnaire that's going to be sent out and that we're going to use as far as the basis of the vetting process.
Well, this is obviously an update from the initial.
It's only added one thing, and that is the last question. What % of your budget is derived from individual donations, public donations, and other sources such as grants or internally generated funds? If this is an organization that's making money and 80% of their budget is already handled by themselves, do they really need $10,000 from us? Okay, basically is what.
You want me to rip through these?
Yeah, if you want to, for the audience, that's fine. Go ahead.
Donation checklist for Board of Selectmen, Acton, Maine, for criteria for town donations, for charitable donations. Number one is identification.
Push that microphone in front of him a little bit, please, ma'am.
Number one is identification.
Tom, talk up to the microphone, please, sir.
Number one is identification. Number two is contact person and email address. Just shout out when you want me to stop. Number three, category of charity or NGO for internal use. Number four, new donation request or previous recipient. Clarify that one for us, will you?
Well, again, this is like Ms. Michaud was bringing up, even if they are a repeat requester,
Yeah.
we're still going to vet them, okay?
Okay. Number five, number of people receiving service or educational training from your organization in the past calendar year and this calendar year. Do you mean total for
The number of people receiving services,
Okay. Not just for in Acton, okay. Number six, number of Acton residents served in past calendar year and this calendar year, or total number of people served and percentage of recipients from Acton.
Mhm.
Number seven, do you compete or overlap with other community organizations providing a similar role for the community within your county? Gonna be some phone calls on that one. Okay, I mean, between agencies, I can see that, but that's for the good, I guess. If your program did not exist, I guess this is 7B. If your program did not exist, what other agencies in the county could carry on your mission?
And again, we have a lot of overlap in some things, not in most, but in some.
By that phrase, did you mean previous to the year in which we're discussing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Or they are well aware, most organizations are well aware of whom they're competing with
Sure.
for certain
Yeah.
issues, okay? And they'll be able to answer that. That's not going to be a hard question for them.
Okay. Number eight, do you have a personal contact or department contact in Acton town government with whom you coordinate your work?
And again, if they say, yes, we have it with Mr. X,
Yeah.
then we can talk with Mr. X. Say, are you having good cooperative discussions and you work well with these people?
Yeah.
And do they work well with us?
Number nine, average dollar amount of goods or services provided for each person receiving assistance from your organization.
I want to go back to number 8 real quick.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. What happens if that's a privacy type of issue? Because sometimes you can get into that where people
That's
don't
true,
want to
yeah.
know your
Like the
business. You know what I'm saying?
women's,
Oh, we need to know if they're coordinating their stuff with our town government. We need to know with whom in the town government they're
Right,
coordinating.
but you were actually using an example, like say I was using something and I come to you and I say I'm using, I don't know, human services, I don't know, in a department, but I didn't want you to know what I was using for their things, you know? Some of
No,
it's
I don't know. I
privacy.
don't know. If they say, yes, we work with Acton and we work with the town administrator, with Neighbors Helping Neighbors and helping people whose homes are burned, and we give them emergency funds, et cetera.
That's usually public, but I'm talking about private things. In other words, if we help them, if somebody's getting help privately and they don't want,
I don't care about their private. I want to find out if they're dealing with our town government, then we have a person whom we can talk with to say, are they effective?
They won't mention the names.
They're not going to
That's
mention
kind of what I was
names.
getting
No, we're talking about numbers here. And a general, hey, for the department, are these people working with you well? Are they easy to work with? Can you contact them when we need them?
okay,
That sort of thing,
all
okay?
right, that's kind of.
Nothing personal, nothing personal. No, we don't care about persons.
Number 10, do you provide education or training of personnel from Acton? Question mark. If
And we have
so,
3 lake groups that have summer students.
Yep.
Okay? And we need to know that. Are they paying them, and how many students are we talking about for summer jobs? It's important. It gives the students some spending money, and it also teaches them a great deal about
You're gonna
environment.
inform the voters with that
Yeah.
question, too.
if so, how many Acton residents are involved in such programs?
Mhm.
Number 11, please list all programs which are provided by your organization.
Which needs to move more than one line.
12, do you maintain a system whereby programs are examined for effectiveness and satisfaction of recipients? Number 13, if your organization concerns itself only with other specific communities, including Acton, that's a jawbreaker, Will. What the hell does that mean?
It's a German sentence. Forgive me. That's my schooling in Germany that comes
I know.
out there.
Gesundheit. If your organization concerns itself only with other specific communities, including Acton, how about, does your organization work with other communities besides Acton?
What percent of donations, in other words, if we have a whole slew, if this organization works for every town in western York County, okay?
Right.
What
Wait a minute,
percentage
I
of
just-
donations come from us, and what percent come from Sanford? If Sanford provides 5, but they're asking 15% from us, hey, why?
But is it okay to condense the
We'll
meaning of that?
we'll clean that
Okay.
one up, I promise.
Number 14,
13.
Fred 13. That was.
Oh, I'm sorry, we had a number problem. The next one is 13, which should be 14 and 14.
13B.
Yeah, 13B. There you go.
What percentage of your annual budget is devoted to administration of programs rendered?
Now, this is important, okay? If the
Yeah,
organization has a 20+% of donations go to administration, there's something wrong there. And is that an organization that we should be giving tax dollars to?
What percentage?
The general number is 20%. That above that is exorbitant. And then we're just paying for bureaucrats to sit and diddle paper.
What percent of your budget is derived from individual donations, public donations, or other sources such as grants or internally generating?
Now, if they're making money from some other aspect of their thing, that's different from an organization that really depends entirely on donations. And we need to know that.
Internally
Because in the future, we're going to be able to say, hey, we only have 70,000 to spend for donations. So it may come to the point where number 14 or 14A or B or C or whatever it is going to be important, because this particular organization has means of getting other monies and in fact has gotten other monies, whereas this one is really dependent exactly upon donations.
My only question to that one, if it gets a percentage of the money, sometimes that money's already pre-allotted.
And that could be a very
Would that
important,
become an issue?
Explanation.
it'll be an explanation, and then we can say, we understand.
Okay, because that's what I'd be more concerned of, even though they might get 100,000.
I agree.
That might be somebody else, something else, been told how to use
Absolutely
it.
correct.
It might be whatever we can give them, whether
But
it's
see,
little to nothing or whatever.
That's where, sitting around the table and this comes up, we will ask that question and they'll give us an explanation for it. In which case we would say, okay, that's cool.
Tom, what was the change you had on number 4? Did you make a recommendation, or was there something, language?
A request of previous recipient, this is the fact that every year, whether they've been vetted or not, the previous year, they're required to do it.
Did you ask for language to be present before us, or was that somewhere else?
That was in the,
Number 4 on this one, where they
No,
wanted
but
to
this is
vote.
the one that we're,
I know, but I
this is
think
what
that's the
we're-
one you're thinking about, Jim.
no, I know, but this is what we're taking an action on. That doesn't matter.
number 4, in my mind, just meant that we were asking them for a determination of whether,
They're new requesters or previous requesters.
yeah,
But you had mentioned that maybe we could put some language in there that the request has to. or some-
Oh, we
they
could
have
put
the
that,
language
we would put that in there,
Before us.
required annually. Yes. Okay. I understand what you're saying.
that very last phrase in 15 maybe could be more clearly stated, something like,
Well, again, these are questions that we're going to, if we see it and we know this form well, this is going to be a question mark that we're going to ask these people. I see that you get public donations as well as earning some internal profits there. Please explain why you want to get donations from us.
Good.
And if they have an adequate explanation, that's fine.
I
Then
just-
we can say acceptable.
I'm just suggesting, well, there's maybe a clearer wording that we can come
Okay.
up with for that phrase, like, or profit-making activities of the organization or something.
Okay.
I mean, what's this, and that's the sense of it, am I right?
Yeah, internally generated funds. Profit making, okay.
Does that work? I don't know.
Profit making.
That's sort of a dirty word for most 501(c)(3)
Right, yeah, I mean,
Internally generated was sort of
red
a
flag,
generic
right?
term that we can use. It's not going to be offensive to anybody, including the
Okay.
501(c)(3)s.
okay.
And if you want the very last one, very last statement, it says you must come before us.
Yeah.
There's no choice.
Yeah.
You must come before.
Exactly.
That's what I'd like to have
And
there
that,
somewhere.
then that should be on here somewhere.
We will
at the
put
very
that
end,
at-
afterwards, the very beginning.
This will be a questionnaire to be completed prior to the necessary,
Yeah,
yes,
that way you guys have a chance to look at it.
exactly. Yeah. Well, see, that'll come up in how we do it. This was just for the form tonight. But we'll put it on there. Yes, we'll put it on there prior to face-to-face vetting.
Yeah,
So
this will be prior, this answer has to be done prior
Before,
to.
that's right. So everyone will have it.
But you want to state somewhere also, either on this one or this one, however you guys
But
want to do it.
this
but
is
it
gonna
needs
make
to
them
be
have to come very
before you.
prepared and organized.
Right.
Yes,
Right.
yes. And some of the ones right now, Mr. Driscoll, are simply
10 minutes.
PR stuff with pretty pictures on it.
So what's the next step here, Will?
Well, what I would like to do, if you agree that this sort of sums up most of the things that we would want to do, would be to simply vote on that tonight and let me work with the town clerk and the town manager to clean it up into a nice format, and then we'll present it out electronically to everybody as our final product for the tool that we will use for the process.
Sure.
You guys think?
I think it's a good idea. It's going to.
Yeah,
They're definitely gonna have to come in very organized and prepared, you know?
And they should.
Yeah. And it's going to help conversation.
And it'll help us to organize our approach with them, because things that we see here that may be questionable, we will ask them about.
Right, 'cause at that point, you guys will have all this paperwork in
Correct.
front of you. You'll
Correct.
have the questions you can ask for this committee, that particular group.
Right on.
It should clean up some of the process that you guys have going on.
Right, correct, totally.
Because we've all gone down that road. I've come before Warrant and Finance, and I thought I was prepared and found out I really wasn't as prepared as I thought I
And
was.
this way, they can say, well, you asked me this question, I don't have that answer, and it wasn't on the questionnaire, Mr. Warren and Finance. I can get it for you, but it's not one that you
I
have.
think it's great.
Okay. So if I could hear a motion that we accept this format and these questions to be edited and sent back to the group, we can even vote for them electronically. As far as I can see, there's no illegality with that.
We can vote tonight. right here, where you have a quorum.
Well, I would prefer, we can vote tonight to accept them, and then I'd like to hear a motion that you ask the chair to clean it up and then present the final.
Basically, he wants to add your wording and.
Yeah, and everyone's wording that's here, okay? So if I could hear first a motion, if we could, to accept the basic questions that were listed.
I'll make a motion to accept the questions listed and also the one added on the top there of the donation check sheet.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I second that motion.
Is there any further discussion on this particular motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay. And now, if you would think about saying that you'll ask me to go ahead and clean this up into a nice format for a questionnaire to be represented as the final copy to be adapted. Okay? If I could hear a motion for that.
Move we ask Will Williams to finalize the language with the assistance of the town clerk and correspond with the committee members as to the result.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Any further discussion on this? All in favor? Any opposition? Fine. Is there any other item tonight that we need to do?
Do we need to meet again before?
Well, the question is whether I have to ask whether or not, I'm accustomed to doing a lot of email meetings, and I know that's not something that has been used in the past. We now have our own town email addresses. They will certainly be copied and left for freedom of information as well. But what I would like to do, if we can legally do it, is to clean this up in a format that we can use, send it out for final approval electronically, and if it is approved, to go ahead and proceed.
Can we take an action item
Such as?
such as
What you're
what you're
suggesting.
saying in an email?
I don't know. I'm going to have to ask. I'm accustomed to doing that in my previous lives.
Well,
Right.
actually, that still falls under the freedom of information.
Sure. And
So they'd be able to see who actually
Yeah, I
voted
know,
to
but I
do
think
it.
there's something to.
if we cannot do it legally, then obviously we're not going to do it. We'll have a quick
No, I was just
meeting.
asking.
We'll have a quick meeting, but you will get a copy of it in your new email address prior to any meeting that we must have, so that you will be totally aware of what we're going to vote on. Okay?
That's just a question, I don't know.
No, that's fine. The other thing I have is everyone assigned as a liaison to other committees in the town? I know there was someone that was supposed to go to fire rescue, and I volunteered for that, and have been to one only because I was out of the country. There's somebody who's supposed to go to the school
I'm from this committee. you
from
mean?
this committee,
I think I'm the liaison to the planning board, if I'm not
and you're the
mistaken.
liaison to the planning board, and our new members, I don't know. We have a, but we have a representative from the cemetery committee, do we not, Ms. Bichot?
I can represent myself, I guess.
Yes, ma'am. Anyway, I think we ought to have in the future a quick report from every liaison. Otherwise, there's no reason for people to go and spend time with these other committees if they're not going to come back and report to us what's going on.
Or
So I'm going to add that as a routine on our future format as far as calling a meeting. We'll have a report from all the liaison groups, just a 15-second or 20-second. Nothing really happened except for da-la-la-la.
Probably would be not a bad idea, that way you guys.
That way, we at least know what's going on elsewhere in the town committee world. And as I said, if we're not going to do it, then there's no reason to have people spend 2 hours at the various committees throughout the month. It's a waste of their time if they're not going to share it with us. Now, if that is it, I would ask that we have a motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor? All opposed? Thank you all. It was a productive meeting, and the time is 19:10. Thank you all.